All right, we live. Let's go.
Welcome back to the Winner's Circle podcast, everybody. Thank you so much for tuning in. I'm super excited for our guests this week. They are part of a podcasting team, and I'm super excited to learn from them. The goal of this podcast is to bring you guys lessons and messages from people who are going for their win in the real world. And what that looks like is basically just following their passion, no matter what the cost. Sometimes it's not easy to do so. And just following your passion, listening to your calling, and doing what you love, even if it's kind of against the status quo. So I'm super excited for this podcast. Let's get right into it.
Right on. So I'm so excited, Taha, and our audience to meet our two guests today. I've gotten to know them in Texas over the last 3-4 years when I've been visiting down Onnit and Onnit Gym. Our guests are the current Aubrey Marcus Podcast team, Ryan, Giles, and Chris Cortinas. And they're such great guys. I'm so stoked. They're two of the guys I look forward to meeting most whenever I go down to Onnit. They've helped me with a couple of my Hero Project events at Onnit Gym. They've helped me with a fundraiser I did with Lululemon and the Love Your Brain Foundation. And there's always there sharing and helping me, make me feel so welcome. So I'm so stoked to hear their stories. They're such cool guys. And welcome, Ryan, Giles, Chris Cortinas. Stoked.
Yes, thank you for having us, man.
Yeah, thank you, man. Appreciate it.
So, we're going to get right into our questions. And Taha and I met in Aubrey Marcus's Go For Your Win group. And so important to that group right at the beginning is knowing what your mission is. Your mission is your guide star principle on how you go about not only to your work, but your friendships, relationships, all aspects of your life. So that is how we start. We're going to ask you, what is your personal mission? What are you here on this earth to do? And we'll kick it off with my man, Ryan Giles.
Well, that's a very deep question, but I think right now for me, my mission on this earth is to help create content and put it out into the world that helps inspire and motivate people to be their best and live their best life, basically, right now. Yeah. Yeah. And, still learning, and I'm on my journey to trying to learn how to create more kind of content and different content that's going to spread messages in different ways, not just in the podcasting, but, through video and audio and all kinds of things.
Yeah, it's cool that you kind of have a simple way of putting it, and that can be carried out in so many different avenues, right? Which allows you to bring out even more creativity, even more kind of artfulness in that. That's really cool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, we're fortunate because we get to work with so many people that are putting out so many great things that I feel like my mission is to help make that happen. Because I was super motivated by podcasts way back when. And for me, the thought that things that I'm making are helping motivate and inspire people to do different things is, for me, that's pretty much the most rewarding part of all of this.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. And Chris, how about you?
My mission right now, probably to just grow and live the best life I can, pretty much. There's a certain amount of goals I have, of course, but, some of those being kind of like what Ryan was saying, putting out the best content out there, helping others put out the best content out there. Kind of leaving a mark, in this industry. And, I also do music. And so I want to make a mark on the house music industry, before I leave this place. It's just a passion of mine. So audio and it just all goes hand in hand, but that's pretty much my mission.
Beautiful. Thank you for sharing that.
So what does going for your win mean to both of you? And what does your win look like for you guys today? What does living your win look like for you? So we'll start with Ryan.
For me, going for your win is interesting because I was there for, I worked on it for the first one, but I wasn't a part of it, but I was a part of the second and the third launches. But the secret that most people don't know when they sign up for Go For Your Win is the going is actually the most important part. the win is something that might not even actually ever come to fruition because I'm 40 years old and I've gotten to the place where I want to get, but you still don't feel like there's always something else. But the Go for Your Win course, the going is the magic. You meet people that are also going, that also want to help you. And I think in life, whatever it is, the goals you're trying to get, while you're pursuing it, it's like so cliche, like the journey is the whole point, but it really is, because along the way you find more goals and more missions to follow. So I don't know if there's ever a real win, but the going is the most important part, because that's where all the magic is.
Totally. And I think everybody is kind of focused on this destination happiness. You know, when you get to the win, you'll be happy. But as you said, like, sometimes that doesn't even happen. And then it does happen and you're like, okay, now what? And just focusing on all the lessons and realizing that we really only have this current moment right now. And if you're not happy in that moment and winning in that moment, even if your win isn't there yet or you're not there yet, is so crucial, because we're just totally living in the future or the past all the time.
Exactly. And sometimes the win is right here in front of us.
Exactly. Cool. How about you, Chris?
To me, when that comes across, it's more like just never give up on your dreams, keep pushing no matter what comes at you in life. I mean, there's obstacles all the time. Just never give up, put your all into your passion, and to me, that's pretty much what Go for Your Win means, reaching a certain goal, but trying to get there with putting everything in, put all your cards in.
Yeah, definitely. Something that I was a wrestler in high school, and my coach, if he ever knew that we weren't like giving it our all in that moment, we would all have to like run more, because all you can do, like, even if you lose a match, right? If you gave all, you did your absolute best, that's all you can ask of yourself. The outcome is going to be the outcome. So I like that a lot.
Truth.
Yeah.
So let's get into like what your win looks like today. Like, what does your day look like for you guys today? And out of all these wins you've been on, like, what are you most proud of that you've accomplished thus far on your journey?
Well, for me, I guess I'll start with what I'm most proud of accomplished. I set out to kind of become a podcast producer without really knowing how to do it or what to do. And I just kind of stuck with it. And I'm pretty much most proud of getting to this place. But now that I'm here, some of my wins would probably be future projects. I'm trying to create a course right now to teach not just podcasting, but like all of content kind of creation and how everything's put together. And so I'm very proud of where I've gotten to. And that's probably my biggest accomplishment, is just being able to pick something, find a goal and reach it. And now it's just more like trying to accomplish some further goals. But for me, I'm kind of, very happy and living in the win at the moment. Yeah.
Beautiful. How about you, Chris?
I'm just blessed to be in a position where, I wake up every day and I'm working on audio, I'm working on videos. Like, I don't know, I was in all kinds of different positions in my life, and this is like the best. This is exactly where I want to be, And so I always tell people, I'm like, I'm happy with what I do. This is always what I've wanted to do. I've wanted to do audio. I went to school for audio. This is kind of my realm. This is my passion. This is my stuff, So, yeah. So, I mean,
Awesome. It's really cool to see people who are doing what they were put on this earth to do and doing what lights them up and fills their spiritual cup, because a lot of people aren't in that position right now. And I think, having other people who are doing that, it can inspire people to try to pursue actually what they're here to do. Because I think life is so short. I know people have other aspects in their life that they need to consider to be able to support their family or whatever, but life's so short, and I really believe that everybody should be doing what they love with their time. And I I studied mechanical engineering, and I very quickly learned that that was not what I could do for the rest of my life. I lasted a year in that field before I was like, this is not what I'm here to do. And I leapt into the fitness industry, and even though it was hard monetarily for a little bit, like I didn't even care. I was so much happier. And I feel like the sooner that you kind of start working on what you're passionate about and working to monetize that, the sooner that comes to you. But if you don't kind of follow that calling, then that'll never happen. It's scary to take the first action step a lot of the time, though.
Yeah. Even if it's just chipping away while you're still doing your kind of normal 9 to 5, but having a little goal and setting aside a little bit of time every night to try to get a couple steps closer to it, still going for your win, you know?
Yep.
Yeah. And I, one of my biggest accomplishments, or I mean, I have a few, but is Ryan rescued me in that and at work, there was a certain point where, I was transitioning, and we always talked about music and working on something together, beats, and just him taking that extra, just giving me a chance, to put me into that position. To me, that's an accomplishment, because I got to work with Ryan. Like, I mean, I still work with you, but it's
we should start by saying we started in the accounting team at Onnit.
Yeah. I'm trying
we both worked on the accounting. Chris started in the warehouse at Onnit.
Yeah.
Wow.
And then worked his way up to accounting. And then I came on the team, and we both were into music and stuff. And somehow I found my way into the podcast first. And then when Chris came along, I already knew he knew what he was doing. So it was an easy choice.
That's awesome. Wow. Yeah. So I think it's a big thing that some people don't understand is when they are having their kind of dream idea of what they want to be doing, they don't kind of see the steps that you can take between there. And they think, oh, I don't have that job to jump into right away yet, so I'm not going to do anything. So just trusting in the fact that from each job that you do, no matter what it is, your trash can man or something, like you will learn like skills that you will be able to take into the next job. So that's really cool.
Yeah. And a lot of people have a passion that they put down, and then they go to work and they don't do it for years. And for them, they'll say, oh, it's been so long. I don't know how to use any of the software, any of those things. And some of those tiny steps for me, certainly, where we're going back and just starting with tutorials and learning, like, okay, this is what I want to do. This is what I have to know how to do. It's a huge thing, but one step at a time, eventually after a while, if you don't stop, you'll make it.
Yeah. And everybody started from not knowing anything. That's something that I don't really think about. Like, I have mentors, and I'm just like, I don't know anything about business. I don't know like anything about, most stuff that goes into creating my own business and running my own business, which is my goal. But I got to just remember that that's all things that I can learn and just keep working at improving the whole time.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I don't know, if I would have never, like Ryan said earlier, I was in a warehouse at Onnit. If I would have never said anything to Evan, he was the manager at the time, when a position made itself available, who knows what would have happened. I would have still probably been in the warehouse. But from that point, I kind of made my way into working with like the labels for the supplements and stuff, and then I jumped into accounting. Such a weird jump to make on these different positions. And then I was going to school for accounting because, I was like, well, I guess this is what I'm going to do, and then it's like, you're there in school, and then I did pretty good, but it's still like, I'd go home and I'm like, all right, I got music time to go, I got audio time now. It's just, I always knew there was something else, like I've always had that passion for music and audio. So it's like, I need to get in that realm. And so if you don't speak up, you don't know what can happen.
Totally. Like, you gotta not be scared to share yourself, right? I mean, a lot of us are quieted just from whatever we've learned in our lives. But if you don't, nobody's going to know what you're capable of, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Cool.
So what are those tools that you guys use to overcome that fear? Because that is the number one thing that really prevents people from truly going for their win, going all in and like being it, living it, like all four of us are doing right now. How have you guys came fear, and how do you guys continue to overcome that fear and the resistance that is always going to be there?
Well, I think I can kind of speak for Chris on this too. A lot of the stuff that we did in the beginning, we're talking about not knowing what you're doing, and we didn't have time to have fear. Sometimes it was like, this thing is coming up this week, and if we don't do it, then it's not going to happen. So it was good that we didn't have a choice to like sit in the fear. What we did was we pushed through, and we made mistakes a lot, but we learned from those mistakes. And I think one of the main tools is just actually starting it, doing it. Because once you get it going, the ideas start to roll, but the hardest thing is just to start.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of like how I deal with, the things that you do in your life that make you feel good, but a lot of the time you're just like, oh, I don't want to do that. Like waking up in the morning and doing breath work, I'm just like, oh, I don't want to do that.
Yes.
Or going to work out in the morning. That's why it's so crucial for me to just like get up and do things before I can even like think about what's happening, so that I just do it.
Because it feels so good once you've done it.
Right. But just like getting started. Same thing with going to the gym. Like if I say like, oh, I have to do 2 hours of a workout, which is me creating like a possibility of fearing that, not wanting to go do it. Or I'll just say like, I'm just going to go for 10 minutes. If I just do 10 minutes, that's totally okay. But every time I just get started and it's like totally fine, I can do way more. It's funny how even though things feel so good, it's so hard to get started sometimes.
Very much so.
Chris, anything you wanted to add to that?
I think Ryan pinned it all down on that one. Yeah, it's just, he's right. You're so busy that there's no time to like freak out. It's like, oh, we got to figure this out. Like it's go, 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 And I don't know. I can't really pinpoint a time where I felt like I was dealing with fear. And I'm not saying that's like nobody's going to feel that, but for us, it was just kind of like just grind and just get through it. Things are going to happen, like working, for Aubrey. I didn't work as close to him, but there were points where he wants something done a certain way, and you kind of like walk in that room, you're like, oh, it's going to get crazy. You don't know what he expects, but there's really never been any fear.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and what you find when you do some of those things, that when you push through those fear things, is that A, it wasn't as bad as you thought it was going to be, because it was a story you made up. But B, you can get through it, and then hopefully it makes the fear a little smaller the next time.
Yeah, that's beautiful. There's a quote from Terence McKenna that I love, and the last question, or the last sentence is, by hurling yourself into the abyss and realizing that it's a feather bed. And I feel like that's so the case for so many things that we go through, is like we're physically, we might feel the fear in our bodies, but all this stuff that we're making up in our head is like us working from our mind, which is all of our mind is what we've learned throughout life. Our body is what's been here basically for thousands and thousands of years, right? It has an innate wisdom. Fear is like that healthy emotion, but it's easy if you don't have the stories to step through that fear, but the stories are what prevent us from doing that a lot of the time. So gaining that awareness that it's really us causing that suffering for ourselves and making it so much harder, and building the evidence that each time that you step through that, it gets easier and easier. I wouldn't say the fear goes away, but you just know how much more you can handle, because our minds think we can handle so much less than we physically can. So building that evidence to prove that to yourself is really awesome.
Definitely.
I think one really exciting thing to have both Chris and Ryan on are like, these are two individuals who are truly like living their win. They're making it happen, and it didn't just start here though. So I would really like to hear your guys' origin story, how you got to these points. I know both your guys' stories are like really interesting, and it'll help people understand that they could also win too. Like we're all of us going for a win that are winning. Ty, myself, Ryan, Chris, like we're just like you. And all the guests we're interviewing, you have to start somewhere, and it's going to be easier for some. It's going to be other for others, but it's just bringing awareness, like what are your cards in the now and moving forward, taking action or not. So let's hear how you've taken those actions all throughout, like right from the beginning, Ryan, and just kind of give us, trace us a story that began before the accounting at Onnit, because there's so much more that brought you.
Yeah. Well, I'm old, so I'll try to keep it brief, but I, in college, I was a baseball player. And I found out about, they had an electronic music course. So I started taking this little course, and then eventually that led to me quitting baseball and going to school for audio engineering in LA. And I started getting jobs in studios, and long story short, I got married and had children. So I had to put that aside for a long time. And we moved to Vegas, and I worked in the casinos for like 8 years, bartending in some of the casinos. And then I heard podcasts, and I immediately was like, man, I can do this. And back then with Rogan, Red Band, it sounded really bad. So I was like, dude, this audio is horrible. Like they need me, you know? So I basically, like I said, from that point, I decided, okay, let me get off all my old equipment, dust everything off, update all my stuff. And I just started chipping away, honestly, not knowing what would happen. But I was old enough to know in life that I look at luck like a wave, right? And I think it's always coming in life. There's always opportunity, but if you don't have a good board ready to go, then you're never going to catch the wave. So for me, it was about building the board and learning about all the stuff. And when I got to when I got fed up with being in Vegas, we just decided, like, I'm not going to live like this anymore. I'm going to move on. And basically we just moved to Austin without even having a job or anything. And jokingly we said, like, oh, maybe we can get a job at Onnit. I mean, you know, I'm sure Aubrey needs someone to work on his podcast, but got to Onnit and started in the accounting, and just did my best to do the best job I could. Even though that wasn't the job I wanted to be doing, I still tried to be excellent at what it was. And you know, some people noticed, and I got promoted. And then the guy who promoted me was I believe he was our president at the time. But he had a podcast. And so I started doing podcast stuff with him, but I was just his assistant. And he just became a fan. And Jason Havey, he really helped me kind of get into that Aubrey spot. And then once I got in the Aubrey spot, I just kept learning. I never stopped figuring out the cameras and the lighting and how to make everything better. And, you know, eventually finally got to where I wanted. But a big part of how I did do it was the Joe Dispenza stuff. You Are the Placebo. I used to, well, actually, when I got hired, they didn't call me back for 3 months, but since I had already been in the building, I started visualizing being in the office and having a job there. And then once I got hired, it was a long story, but I didn't have a desk. So I didn't even know what job I wanted, but I was like, yo, accounting sucks. I got to get something else. So I just started visualizing typing emails at a desk. Like, I don't know, any desk is not in this department, so fuck it. And then the desk I got, I could see directly into Aubrey's office. So I would just watch the podcast happening, and I was like, dude, I want to do that so bad. So I just started visualizing myself doing the podcast until one day you're sitting there, you know, in the room.
That is so beautiful. Oh my gosh, I got like goosebumps. First, I love the visual of like luck being a wave, but if you don't have a board, you can't catch that. And I think it's, you know, if you're not doing the work to allow yourself to catch that wave, like the opportunities are coming. Everything is just energy. The energy is flowing to you, through you. But if you don't have those skills that you're building to be able to provide people with what you know you can provide, then you don't really have the opportunity to catch that wave. So that was cool. And I love Joe Dispenza, and I just can feel that, like that's crazy that you're just visualizing that. And
yeah, the crazy ending to that story is I flew to Oregon and did a podcast with Joe Dispenza.
Yeah, like, oh my God.
Yeah.
I'm working through visualizing for me right now. I'm a personal trainer. but I'm trying to get into life coaching. I want to create my own personal development company. And I just for our course, actually, we wrote out like our perfect day in the life. And I'm not a writer, or I always lived in the story that I hated writing and that I suck at writing. But the more that I worked at it, I had never put down like that much imagery. So, cause I see like my dream house and whatever I want to like do all day long in my head, but putting that out physically and then working on visualizing that all the time, I can seriously like feel myself getting closer and closer to that every day. And it's funny how this is not stuff that we learned to do in school, you know, like I was always like, I was an engineer, like so logical, so reasonable, so technical. And I just really believe that we are so powerful with our thoughts. Like we can create whatever we want to, as long as we truly believe in it and feel it physically. Just like Joe says, like if you feel what's happening, like what you would feel like if that happened for you, that's bringing that experience to you, allowing you to receive it. So I love that.
Yeah, attaching the feeling is the key.
Yeah,
very much.
Exactly. Chris?
My story is a little different only because, you know, I'm like a DJ, so I've been DJing since I was a teenager. And so audio's always been there, right? The music passion has always been there. I've worked a ton of jobs, you know, and none of them, you know, were just like, you know, Old Navy, whatever, 7-Eleven, all these different jobs. And there was a point where I was just DJing for a living. I was just making, you know, pretty good money just DJing Monday through Sunday. And that came to a halt because, I mean, nowadays everybody's a DJ. And so, you know, I definitely wanted to figure out another route, another way to bring in income. And so staying away from like downtown and all that stuff, I started doing like mobile gigs and DJing weddings and stuff like that, private events. And then, you know, I was kind of like in and out of jobs again. And then my best friend Javier was like, "Hey, we need somebody for the Black Friday sale at Onnit." And I was like, "All right, cool. Like, can I go in on Monday?" He's like, "No, I need you today." So he trained me like that Thursday, and then Friday I was working. Like I was in the warehouse working. I was like, "Oh, dang." And being in the warehouse, I always wanted to be in the creative area. I was like, man, I didn't even know this existed, you know, like, and there's two brothers that work there. One of them still does, Raleigh and Kyle. And I think I went up to Kyle and I was like, man, I want to do what you do. Like, I want to create something for Onnit, you know. And it was like, it was a shot in the dark, whatever. And like I said earlier, I just started building up, and you know, Jason Haley gave me all these opportunities to move up in the company. And finally, you know, Ryan recruited me to work on the podcast with him. We started the Black Swan Yoga podcast out of nowhere, you know. And then I started working on Kyle Kingsbury's podcast and helping out with Aubrey's podcast. We did Design Your Life. We did all these different events, and I started learning about video production. It's just been crazy, you know, to get from the warehouse to where I'm at now. But yeah, and then now, because of Ryan, I've launched a business of just editing podcasts, you know, so very grateful for all that, you know, and that's kind of my story, my origin story.
Well, yeah, it goes back to Chris had a surfboard when the wave was there. That's basically what it came down to.
Yeah, exactly.
You got this lucky thing, you know. You were the only one who was capable of doing it. You know, I actually had a couple people before that weren't really we couldn't pick it up that quick, but it comes back to that, you know. The whole time you're in the warehouse, you're still working on, you know, audio and music, and when the wave came, you know, you were there with the board.
Exactly.
I want to know more about when you first got offered that. You said you started working or training Thursday. like what went into that decision to start? Because if you hadn't made that, we have no idea. You have no idea where you'd be, right? So what was that kind of day like for you?
I mean, I was at that point, I was working for a job and they didn't want to give me insurance, right? They kept messing with me and I needed something solid, you know, and Javi, he's been at Onnit for a good while now. And he had been there and he was like, I can bring in Chris, you know, I consider myself like a real reliable person, you know, like I'm going to work my butt off for you. The training was pretty intense just because you have to learn something totally new, you know, you're packaging all these supplements and stuff. But yeah, I mean, it was, I don't know, just kind of being thrown into the mix of everything. And then once we got through Black Friday, to me, everything else was a breeze. You know, it was like, it was, I'm not going to say it was relaxed, but it was nicer, you know, and the people I worked with were fun. And, you know, they always play like volleyball and stuff outside. And so there's all these different things going on at Onnit all the time. So to me, it was you know, I felt I was in a good position. And it wasn't until Evan had made that post about, hey, we need somebody in compliance. And I was like, you know, I know a lot about computers and I think I can do more than just package a box. And that's what it came down to. I went up to Evan, talked to him, and it was like, man, you know, this is what I can offer you. I went to school for this. I'm pretty good at the computer. I don't know anything about compliance. So, but this is what I can offer. And I got the job. He taught me how to do compliance. And, you know, from there, it just kind of ballooned into something else.
It's really cool hearing that, because from the beginning, it doesn't really sound like you had any idea where it was going to take you, but all of the decisions, it's like you know, listen to what felt right for you and what you felt like you could provide. And all of that led you to exactly where you want to be. So I think just listening to what your heart's telling you is important, because we, again, negotiate things all up in our minds a lot of the time. But when you really listen to what your body's telling you, you always end up exactly where you're supposed to be.
Yeah, I never thought I'd be working in podcasting. Never.
Yeah.
I was like, oh, I'm going to be a superstar DJ. And no, now I've got this new avenue where it's like, to me, this is a way to step back from DJing later on down the line, you know. So something more concrete. It's definitely a platform that's not going to disappear anytime soon. You know, so yeah.
Beautiful.
So, Ryan, you mentioned one of the guests that you've interacted with that had a huge impact on you, Joe Dispenza. And a great thing about both your positions, Ryan, you've been on the Aubrey Marcus podcast team for 3 years and Chris for 2 years now. And you've had the opportunity to meet so many people from so many different fields, authors, scientists, musicians, athletes, blah, 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 all over the board. So maybe if you could just kind of talk to us about some of the favorite people you've connected with, met, and like what you learned from them, like what about their vibration has really stuck with you after meeting like every week, multiple real high level people, high level, you know?
Yeah, well, meeting all of them is a gift because you get to see that everyone is just a regular person and none of them are the person that you projected them to be when they walk in the door, right? So that's a great gift. But for me, I'm into music as well. I've always done music, and all the musicians that we've had on, literally all of them have been the dopest people. Mike Posner was just super cool and humble, and their music is amazing. We had, you know, Citizen Cope, Nako, it was amazing. Dope dude. And of course, Parangi and his partner Ashley are two of probably the people that have come around that I've really gotten to know well. Parangi's everyone knows Prong. He's the dopest dude. And audio wise, he showed Chris and us actually a lot of stuff about setting up live stuff when we did his show. And I've had the pleasure of going to Sedona and meeting up with them. And for me, it's been the musical guests really stand out, but honestly, all of them have been pretty cool. Yeah.
Cool. Chris?
The ones that come to mind that stay with me every day or really come in my mind a lot, I'm going to have to say Luke's story. He had such an amazing story about his ayahuasca experience that I still talk about to this day. It was something else, you know. Daniel Carcillo, the way he overcame suicidal things, you know, in his life, and he started this great foundation for the hockey players going through so much right now. It was just those podcasts, you know, I always walk out of the room and I'm like, dang, Ryan, that was awesome.
Yeah. And both of those people, Luke and Daniel Carcillo, just super great guys. And, you know, they treat everyone the same. And that's kind of, that's the key for me with all the guests is that's really the only test you have to pass is if you look at all of us the same way and treat us all the same, then, you know, then those are the people that are always my favorite.
Yeah. Max Lugavere, Ben Greenfield, man, he is on fire when he comes. Like his nutrition, he just knows so much. You're just like overwhelmed with everything. And then Sharon from Bonafide, she just spilled knowledge on our gut, you know, and I still take all that information today. Peter, was it Pete Selig? Peter Selig? Paul Selig. I'm just like, I don't know what that is, but it's amazing to be in that room when he does a podcast. That's something many people don't get to see.
And for those who don't know, Paul said like he does like channeling, right? What does that look like, Chris? Can you kind of like walk the audience like what channeling means? It sounds pretty woo, you know. So
it's pretty interesting because he's like, you know, whoever asks him a question and he's like, okay, they want to speak right now, and he's like,
yeah, he calls them the guides. There's 3 guides.
He gets guides, yeah, and I can't say, you know, if anybody has any doubt, you can go look at the podcast. I don't think it's fake or anything. It's something out of this world, but he the way he remembers what they're telling him right on the spot is just, I can't explain it.
Yeah. He does this interesting thing where he repeats whatever they say really quickly in a weird, strange way. And then he says it and then goes into a repeat. It's kind of like a trance he goes into, and he'll say, they're saying to say this, they're saying to say this, they want you to come through. So it's like you get in this kind of like mesmerizing state where you're just waiting for the next word to come. But yeah, that was a great one to be in.
Yeah, it's so cool that there's just such a variety of the types of people that are on the podcast, and that's what's so cool about any podcast that you create. Like you can there's so many different people who are doing different things that you can learn so much from, and I'm just loving doing this podcast with you guys and Derek, and it's really awesome.
So you guys is the host of your guys' podcast is Aubrey. So what are some things you have learned from Aubrey working with him over the years? What are some key lessons that you've learned from him that have really spoken to you and that you pay for in your actions today?
Well, for me, the biggest lesson you learn when you work with Aubrey is that it's just the same, that he's just a regular dude. I was a fan of Rogan, so I used to love the Aubrey episodes, and you know, I thought he was this thing that I thought I knew who he was and how he would act and, you know, how we would get along. And it's just none of that is true until you actually get to meet the person. And I think the greatest gift Aubrey has given me is showing me that he is just a person just like me, trying to live his best life, you know, trying to be happy, making mistakes, but just the regular person, just like the rest of us. So that's what I've taken away from Aubrey. And we've developed a great relationship, and we become very close, but it's not with the character that I made up in my head. There's an actual person, and it's very different, very different than you know. than the story we make up.
Totally. Chris?
Something for me is I was always nervous around Aubrey. Always. Like, Ryan could tell you so many times I'll be like running in there to get the camera or something. Like, I was just, and it's not because he doesn't, I don't know. There's something about him that back in the day for me was just like, oh, that's the boss. You don't get next to the boss. But as I started working closer to him and talking to him, it was like, oh, this is what Ryan said. He's just a regular person, So, I mean, yeah. And one thing he told me a long time ago in a meeting, it was when they were going to transition me to accounting, all he said was just like, cool, kill it. And that's all I've been doing ever since, is just trying to kill it because, I don't know, I just don't want to let the company down. So I just try to do my best. Yeah.
Awesome. Thanks for sharing that.
And you guys are both killing it, especially in so many aspects. Chris just celebrated today. It's him and his wife's 3rd year anniversary. Ryan has an amazing family. His wife, Amy Giles, has been a huge helper and ally for me. They brought their daughters to my yoga class when I taught it at Onnit, and like they're just winning and killing it in every aspect of life. So I'm so proud of you guys. I'm so stoked to have you on. Taiha and I are on a new journey ourselves as podcasters. We kind of fell into this. We weren't planning on being podcasters. We were just wanting to be of service, and we created a Zoom call to teach people in the Go For Your Win group how to create a mastermind group. And we played on my experience and Eric Godsey, his mastermind group. All of them are my friends. We had them on, and we just kind of shot the shit about like the importance of creating the tribe around you. And if you don't have it, like take action and make that happen, manifest that reality. And then it just turned into a podcast that we are now running to speak to winners every week from all different areas to show like you could win too. Like Ryan is just a normal guy. Chris is just a normal guy. We're all in this together, and we either move forward to our win and we're already there, or we don't. And it's just making those decisions in the now over and over and over again, and creating a new normal. We have that ability to create a new normal. So that long rant, said, what is your advice for Taiha and I with our podcast, with this new podcast creation we have, and then also for our audience? Because like you were talking about at the start, like podcasts are only getting bigger and bigger. So yeah, you guys are masters in this field and been at it a long time. So yeah, we just love to hear what you have to say about how to run a successful podcast, how to get that going, and how to keep longevity there.
Chris, you want to talk about the technical?
Yeah, I mean, so definitely, I would say make sure your audio is sounding great. There's so many tools out there available today that can make your audio sound really great. I hate tuning into a podcast, and it's like, it could be a celebrity and they just released it, and you're just like, what in the world is this? Like I strive, I think me and Ryan both strive we want our stuff to sound like NPR. We want it to us that those podcasts sound crisp, clean, and just, what a podcast should sound like. I would say try to have a finished product before rushing it out the door. That to me, that's huge, because, you don't want to give the people something that could be even better. If you have the right marketing and advertising behind it, you got to build up the hype, and also have a good, I don't know, I guess it depends how big of a crew you have, but you kind of want to have a team, like, somebody who's going to do your audio, somebody who's going to do those social clips, somebody who's going to do your Instagram stories and stuff, because taking it on by yourself, I mean, it can be a lot, you know, and that's why Kyle and Aubrey and everybody else has a team, because if they take it on by themselves, I mean, I don't know if they would be able to do all the things that Aubrey does, you know, so definitely got to have a team in place. Yeah, I think I covered most of it.
Yeah. Audio, I agree. Audio is kind of, for me right now, the most important. You can see with the Rogan deal that obviously video is going to become more important down the line. They're going to become the same. But I think right now, if you're starting off, you definitely want to make sure you have good tools to record. Obviously, if you're doing a Zoom call, we're constrained to whatever Zoom is going to do. But if you're setting up like one-on-one kind of interviews, just make sure you're recording it at a good level. And then people who mix it, if you're not the one who mixes it, it makes it a lot easier to work with. Also, I would say it's very, when you're going to, if you haven't started a podcast, the hardest part is getting guests. And if you plan on having a podcast a week, it becomes a big task 30 weeks down the line. And you don't want to repeat guests, and you want to do all that kind of stuff. But I think definitely understanding that it's going to be a really long-term thing. And you have to be in it for the right reasons. If you're starting a podcast just to kind of be popular and you don't have kind of a point, then it doesn't really make sense. I mean, if you have a podcast and 20 people listen, but it really inspires one, then I think the point of it is been accomplished. You know, make sure you have a kind of a mission of what you want the podcast to do. And one of the hardest things is getting guests. You have to really work hard to reach out to guests and to find a way to get people that have some sort of following to come on, and then use that to help promote yourself. You have to try to send them clips or send them links so they'll help promote it, and try to grow. As you grow with the show, try to grow the guests and try to grow the following. But yeah. And then social media is very important. You definitely have to have some sort of plan. Even if you do only audio, there's ways you can make clips with just audio clips to share on social media. Mm-hmm. And if you're not sharing it, then people aren't going to hear it. And, you know, it does take a lot of work, but you know, if you also are someone who has some capabilities, so when we're talking about building a team, you need to figure out everyone's strong suits and other things. Definitely don't take on everything, but if you are great at, you know, the audio and the video, you want to do your own podcast, you can do audio and video, but you don't know anything about social media, then find someone who can do that, who's going to help you. Because if you do it, it's probably going to be bad, and, you know, it's almost pointless. But you really do have to have kind of all of the pieces together to make it really successful.
Awesome. That was very helpful.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I would say, again, like, the equipment is very important. You know, we send out a list of, you know, of the equipment that we recommend, and there's nothing more like. And of course, right now we have to use Zoom calls or Zencaster or whatever, all these platforms out there. But if you can get the best recording equipment, it just makes the engineer's life way easier. Yeah.
Can you go a little bit? I know Ryan said something about mixing, which I know there's stuff that goes into like making it sound as good as you guys make it, but can you go a little bit more into depth of like what that looks like? Like, is that changing the levels of the volume for somebody who's talking? Just a little bit more about that.
You want to take this, Ryan, or me?
No, go ahead.
Okay. So basically, in a podcast, you're going to have, you know, we're all talking, all four of us are talking, right? And so there's points where we might bust out laughing, like, oh yeah, you know, whatever. So what we do is we want to mix the levels to where we're automating, you know, those peaks and valleys, like the wave. You know, you got to think of the waveform. So you don't want the guest to sound over loud if he laughs too much or something like that. I think it's like -16 LUFs, which is like an audio term, right? Of how loud the audio should be for iTunes, Spotify, YouTube, all that, right? So what we're trying to do is we're just trying to normalize, get it to a good level to where it's not blowing in your ears. You know, if it's really loud in your earbuds, I mean, there's an issue there, you know. But mixing is just taking those levels and making sure everybody's on the same level, and then also eliminating the crosstalk. So you have, you know, I'm talking and the person's talking. Well, you don't want to hear the person breathing on the mic, and you don't want to hear the coughs and the burping, and you know, there's a lot of things that happen while we're sitting here talking. So we go through and we take all that out.
Wow.
So you're left with a finished product of just like a conversation, no interruptions,
No distractions.
no distractions.
Yep.
Yeah.
Got it. Wow. I wouldn't have thought that, but that makes a lot of sense. I was like, do these people like just talk beautifully this whole time?
Now, and like, you know, like, I know some people that I've worked with, like their dog comes in and we have to stop the podcast.
Mm-hmm.
Like, okay, you know, people don't want to hear that when they're
Mm-hmm.
listening to the podcast. So we take all that out, you know, and then we're also adding, oh, go ahead.
Unless it's entertaining, of course.
Yeah. Unless it's
I mean, we'd never take anything out that's not entertaining. You know, we only take out the boring shit for sure.
Yeah, there's times where like Ian would walk in on the podcast and it's just entertaining, you know, like you just leave it like that.
Yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much.
So regarding the equipment, like what does it cost for someone wanting to buy equipment? Like what would be the price range, and like what would be the recommendations, Chris or Ryan, that you guys would say, just the basics to get started?
Go ahead, Chris.
So I think the MixPre 6 is like the go-to. I'm sorry, the Zoom 6. I'm sorry, Zoom H6. Yeah, that's like the go-to for everyone right now. And that runs roughly about maybe $600. You could probably find them used $400 if you're lucky. We recommend using a MixPre by Sound. Is it Sound Dynamics?
Sound design.
Sound design, yeah. That machine is amazing, but that's very it's a little expensive. It's about $1,200. There is other versions of it. There's like a MixPre 3, a MixPre 6, and a MixPre 10. The Shure mics, you know, that Joe Rogan uses, those run about $400. The tone arms, you know, you got to think about the tone arms because you don't want the sound from the tables or anything, your desk or wherever you're podcasting from. Those tone arms can cost up to like $300 if you get the good ones.
What exactly is that?
It's like the arm. So like the mic is right here, and you'll see the arm that's kind of like right here.
Oh, I see.
Yeah. So.
So that connects to like the wall instead of being on the table.
It connects to the table, but you can move them around easily, so everyone uses.
Oh, I see.
Yeah.
Oh, I see. Okay.
Yeah.
But yeah, and if you're just starting out, obviously you don't have to buy the $400 mics. You can buy. Shure has like a SM58 that is a solid mic. It's $100. So you could buy 2 mics and 2 cables, the recorder, and 2 mic stands. You could probably get started for, you know, somewhere around $600, $700, depending on, you know, if you buy this. I always buy a lot of equipment used because most people buy things with these big goals and they get it, and it's very hard to do. So all of my equipment, all of my cameras, I bought people who barely use them. And but yeah, when you're starting out, it's really depends on how you want to structure the thing. Some people like headsets. Some people like you can even do clip-on mics. But yeah, just I would say for under $1,000, you can definitely get a really good podcast setup that's going to give you great audio. And you could probably even buy some of the plugins that we use with that $1,000 to like help mix it and everything. So definitely under $1,000 to get started.
Yeah.
Cool.
That's amazing. Thank you guys both for that. 2 things, one thing that you guys are both great, and you guys are always of service, helping out others, mentoring others. So what are your tips on being a good mentor or being a good helper? How do you best be of service?
For me, it's always, you know, for being a mentor, I try to teach people like all of the lessons that I've learned throughout life. And for me, I think showing a lot of my mistakes and being honest with people has been one of my best maybe qualities in being a mentor. I don't teach you because I know, I just teach you like, hey, this is what I figured out so far. If you have a better idea, that's cool. But I think it's just about really seeing the people for who they are and what they can be, and just helping them figure that out. It doesn't always necessarily mean telling someone you did a shitty job, because a lot of times when we make mistakes, we know we did a shitty job. So it's not necessarily like riding people, but it's being a positive, motivating kind of influence on whatever it is they're trying to do.
Awesome. I have found that whenever I have a coach, I mean, I haven't had very many coaches that were not this way, but being vulnerable and just sharing like your mistakes, as you said, and what you've learned from them, because if you don't share the harder parts of your life, it's like you're like, that's not really human. Like if you've learned all this stuff, but you just have it all figured out, like nobody has it all figured out, and being is I think key to being a good mentor.
Yeah, and you're not really teaching if you're just pretending like you have it all together and you don't make mistakes.
Yeah. Exactly. Chris?
For me, it's always giving the most honest advice. You don't want to me, that's how I could be best of service. If I tell somebody, oh, you can do it this way, but that's not the right way to do it, then I'm not being of service. You know what I mean? So always being very honest and giving the best honest advice on something, and always being willing to help. There's been so many times where, I can recall, like when I first started working with Ryan, there was other things. We weren't just doing podcasting. We were setting up planet events. And it's just like, if I didn't know something, I'm like, well, I got to get in there and learn how to do it. Like setting up the beams and stuff for the lights and everything, just, and just kind of paying that back. If you see somebody in that position where you're like, man, it looks like they need some help, give them the help, because we're all in this together. So we can't just be like, oh, don't worry about him, or let him figure it out. So
That's beautiful. Thank you.
So let's talk about your guys' team. What makes you a good team member for the other? So what makes you a good team member for Chris? And Chris, what makes you a good team member for Ryan? We'll start with Ryan.
Well, Chris and I, what makes us a good team is we're very much equal. I don't feel like there's one of us that knows one thing so much more than the other, that like Ryan's good at doing this and Chris is good at doing that. It's kind of, there's definitely this equal balance. So when we work together, I could be in the middle of something that's supposed to be completely for me, and I know, hey, Chris, can you just do this real quick for me? And I know Chris is going to take care of the audio, and vice versa. If Chris ever, when we're doing our own thing, it's nice to have someone to bounce off of, and to be able to we definitely work together, and it's not like one person does any more or less of the weight.
Yeah, I'm going to agree with Ryan on that. Like Ryan we just have so much in common, so it just makes it that much easier to work with him. And, it's weird. We'll be talking about different subjects in music, oh, do you know this rapper? And we start talking about this, and it's just like, we just know it. I can't explain it. Yeah. So, I mean, it's definitely comes down to just, I don't know, like we just
compatibility.
Yeah.
Yeah.
We just mesh well, and it's just been like that ever since accounting, it's just, we've always talked about music, and it's like, okay, I have something here with Ryan, but you don't know what it can blossom into, just, and it became a great team.
Yeah, when you can find people that you vibe really well with, you don't really need much else.
Yeah, exactly.
So you guys are a dynamic duo, a team of two superheroes. But there, of course, have been challenges and lessons learned the hard way on the path. So maybe could you guys just talk about one real big challenge you've had to overcome, like a failure or something that went wrong, and then how you rebounded, how you learned from that, how you grew, how you saw the positives. So yeah, like let's hear about a failure, somewhere where you did not succeed, and then how you rose back up, how you picked yourself back up.
Well, when I was in Vegas bartending, I had been doing it for so long that it was just so miserable. Amy and I decided, like, we're gonna go for it. We're gonna start our own business, and we did. We basically took all our savings, and I quit my job, and we did that. And it wasn't very successul. We ran it for 3 years, and it was so much work. It was like the hardest thing I've ever done in my life. And of course, you start off thinking, this is it. Like, we're doing it. We're going for it. We're starting our business. It's going to be great. It's going to be successful. But we ate shit, very much so. But throughout it, we learned so many things about how to not eat shit next time, and how to run a business, and the value of money. And our relationship got really good, because despite us going through that, that didn't really have any kind of a drip over into our relationship. It was just something we were going through. So honestly, one of my biggest accomplishment is my failure at business, because after 3 years of that, and it's like the most fear you can imagine, like, we're not going to make money. This is not going to happen. I don't know what we're going to do, but you get through it. And then you're on the other side and you go, holy shit, like, there's nothing that's going to come up that's going to be harder than that. I don't think. And if it is, A, I know I can get through it. And B, I know I'm going to learn from it. So, I mean, really, my biggest accomplishment was one of my biggest failures, because I was able to bounce back, and it really has defined who I am as a person now, because I know what I'm capable of. And I know when push comes to shove, I can work 13 hours a day, even if it's for nothing. I know what I can do, because people will say, I'll do whatever it takes. But sometimes some people don't get that opportunity to actually show that. And so, I gave it my 100% for 3 years, and it was definitely a great accomplishment.
That's awesome. And I think it's really interesting that I think maybe just the way society has raised us, or of course, some people deal with this more than others, but failure is really like feared a lot of the time. And when you kind of shift your view of it, where, if you fail, you're just going to learn how to do that better. Just like anytime that you're in pain, like, you grow so much through the hardship, and learning that you don't have to fear it, because you're going to be so much more badass on the other side. Exactly. Is so empowering. And just realizing that no matter what, everything is going to be okay. Like what we talked about, actually, I think last week with our guests, is just in the moment asking yourself, am I okay? And it's almost always yes. Like, you're not getting chased by a tiger or anything. So just coming back to the present moment and realizing that no matter what happens, like, you're going to make it through that, and likely grow so much, gain so much knowledge, gain so much wisdom, where anytime anything else comes your way, you're going to remember that moment. And what I actually do when I lead meditation sometimes is I'll have people think about a past achievement or struggle that they made it through, and like bring those emotions to them, and then think about something they may be struggling with right now and feeling those same emotions, because you're going to get through it. It's just a matter of time and putting one foot in front of the other every single day, and taking those actions and making those choices that will propel you forward rather than pull you back.
Yeah, and don't be afraid to fail. Yeah. Tim Kennedy came on Aubrey's podcast a couple years ago, and that was his motto: hurry up and fail. Because once we get to that point, you hurry up and fail and figure out what you did wrong so you can get to the next thing. Because if you're just going to keep putting it off and not fail, then you're never going to get anywhere.
Yeah, it's funny. That just reminded me of when I was a junior, and I never wanted anything so much more than to win states for wrestling. And my junior year, I started like believing that I could actually do it. But then I lost in the semifinals to like one of my good friends. And had that not happened, I don't think I would have won states next year, because like, it's great when you win, but you don't learn that much from it, like you learn so much more when you fail, and learning to just accept that and kind of get excited for that, as he was saying, like, is super powerful. How about you, Chris?
So it was the biggest challenge, right? To me, that one is, I saw this meme a while back, right? And it was about all the creative people have the most anxiety or something like that. I know I've seen it somewhere, but that's probably been my biggest challenge is I still struggle with this anxiety. Comes out of nowhere sometimes. And it hit really hard about 2 years ago. I was driving downtown to a gig, and I don't know, I just had this weird panic attack. Had to like stop at IHOP and just lay down and ground myself. It messed me up so much that I didn't even want to drive in my car for like months. Shane at Onnit, he's one of the trainers. He like taught me how to shape breathe, like the triangle. Having to go through all that and do my job at the same time was a lot. And then what the ways I've gotten out of that. I mean, I still deal with it, but ways to get out of that have helped me big time has been yoga, working out, having a good support system that understands what I'm going through. All the trainers that are on it are very helpful about, talking to me about all this stuff. Some of the yogis for Black Swan, they've kind of talked to me about all these things. So, I mean, Derek, says, you're winning, you're killing it. But sometimes I don't feel like I'm killing it because I'm dealing with this shit, sorry to cuss, but it's just kind of like, why, why is this coming out of nowhere, and it's just life. So, but having those avenues to yoga, working out, having something to kind of distract yourself from it is kind of, so it's a constant challenge for me sometimes. Yeah.
Wow, thank you so much for being vulnerable and sharing that. And I loved that you kind of pulled on different avenues that help you work through all of that, because as you said, it's something that you deal with. I've dealt with eating disorders and body dysmorphia for like 9 years, and I sometimes feel like, it's just really a lifelong journey working with mental health issues. And what's so awesome is that you kind of learn, like I've learned to be grateful for it because I've learned so much that I never would have been able to learn without it. And you just gain so much compassion for everybody because of that stuff like that. And the fact that you use movement and use sharing and pulling on your support system is just so crucial, because so many people don't feel comfortable sharing that part of themselves. And I went through a lot of what I went through alone, and it's just crazy because so many people out there deal with all of this too. And we are, most of the time, there's like taboo about feeling this way and dealing with this stuff because it's negative or whatever. But so many people deal with it, and we all want to deal with it alone. It's just crazy to me. So I really appreciate that you share and use those support systems to help you through it. And the more that you're able to share about it, the more I find power in myself when I started sharing about it, and knowing that by sharing my story, hopefully I can help somebody else through their stuff. So just really appreciate that vulnerability.
Beautiful. And that kind of leads us into our next question. We like to talk to all our like guests about self-care. Self-care practice is so important for our holistic well-being, attending to the mind, the body, the spirit. So we just like you to share with our audience and us just something about your self-care routine that you really value, that is a big part of your daily, that helps you guys perform at such an elite level at what you're doing and achieve such success. You guys are riding those big waves, so you definitely need to balance that with some sort of self-care practice to help keep you even keel,
For me, it's I guess the main ones, I do a lot of meditation. The Joe Dispenza stuff's like, kind of more of like a visualizing kind of thing, but Corey Allen's came out with his book recently, and the audiobook is fantastic. And I got kind of deeper into the meditation through that. And I love breath work also. I've been fortunate enough to meet Wim Hof and have the Art of Breath guys come in, and Onnit with her breath work. And we did an episode with Dr. Andrew Weil, and he did this 4-7-8 breath kind of method. So it's like 4 inhale, hold for 7, let out for 8. And recently I've been going deep with that. It's been crazy. Like, you can do it long enough to where you kind of like leave your body. But for me, I really like to reset and kind of just try to have kind of like a blank space from moving forward. It's so hard to stop the thoughts that are going in your head. For me, my self-care is mainly kind of trying to manage my mind and not letting it weave some crazy story that's going to prevent me from doing what I want, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Awesome. Chris?
Yeah, I mean, I would say for me, like I said earlier, the yoga, yoga's really helped. But also getting outside. I feel like I work inside all the time. And so getting outside kind of refreshes, kind of restarts you. You're like, all right, I need to take a breather away from this, because I'm constantly thinking about music in my head all the time. Ideas come all the time, and I'm just like, okay, wait, I got to work on this podcast right now. So yeah, having those resources like yoga and just going outside, and I pray with my wife, and then I also I don't know. I kind of go in between meditation apps. Haven't found one that like really works for me just yet. But those definitely do help. And then like some chamomile tea, or some sort of thing to help me wind down for the night.
Cool.
Beautiful.
I think it's so important for us to kind of remember how much more grounded we can feel in nature, because we are just extensions of nature, yet we build all this stuff to like hide ourselves from it. And just getting outside for a breath of fresh air. Sometimes at my gym, I'll walk across the street. We work, our gym's like right across the street from the beach, and I'll just go over there to take like 5 deep breaths just to center myself, and I feel like a million times better. But sometimes you don't realize how it's taking that little bit of time to just be with yourself for a second and be in nature, take in the fresh air and the beauty around us that is just always in abundance. We feel lack a lot of the time, and I think being in nature helps us get connected to how supported we are all the time, and I think it is really cool that you brought that up.
As we round the corner home to the finish line here, we just have a few more questions. We've talked about so many great guests you guys have met and listened to and interacted with. And usually on a podcast, they're talking about like their greatest lessons they've learned on their path. So I'm really curious to hear about your guys' greatest life lesson you've learned thus far on your journey. Something that, you'd like to share with our audience, because
Well, if I had to pick one, I would say just because you don't know how to do something doesn't mean you shouldn't be doing it. For me, a lot of this has been knowing what I wanted to do or how I wanted the outcome to be, and figuring out how to get that. And for me, one of the biggest things has just been never stop learning, because it's been so important to where I've been and to hopefully where I go, that I just feel like it's very important to know that it is possible to figure these things out, and it's not something that is beyond your realm of what you can do. A lot of times you feel helpless because you don't know how to do it, and I felt that way too, but I just go and figure it out. I'll call tech support. I'll jump on a tutorial. I will figure out how to get to the place where I want it to be. And I don't let it stop me if I don't know what I'm doing.
Beautiful. Chris?
Biggest life lesson for me probably has to be or piece of advice is learn everything you can as early as you can. uh, there's a lot where I'm like, man, I wish I would have started earlier, you know. So but Ryan said it right, you know, it's never too late. But that's one of the biggest life lessons I'm going to give my kid is like, you got to start now, you know, because if you can start early, you'll have a way better opportunities come your way faster, I believe. But yeah, definitely learn everything you can and just never give up, you know.
Beautiful. So we close all our interviews with a few questions from Taiha and a few questions from me that we ask to every guest. And we usually start it off with a breath exercise. Either Taiha and I lead it, or if the guests are into breath, they lead it. And you guys both talked about breath. You talked about the shape breathing, Chris, and Ryan, you talked about the 4-7-8. Whichever one of you feel comfortable, would you just lead us through a couple breath exercises, like just for like 1 minute to prepare us, to get us just really centered, to get like the most out of these final questions, which are really, we're trying to speak to your spirit, your soul.
So you want me to lead this?
Yeah, if you want to, if you're comfortable to. Just like a couple of breaths.
All right. So, I mean, I'm just going to basically do a in 3, out 3, or in 3, hold 3, out 3. Okay. All right. So, all right. Take a deep breath. In 3. And out 3. In 3. Hold for 3. And out 3. In 3. And out 3. In 3. Out 3. In 3. And out 3. In 3. And out 3.
Thank you for that.
Thank you so much. All right, Taiha, take it away.
All right, I got 2 questions for you guys. To someone who had taken the leap to leave the traditional career model and follow their passion, what would be your biggest piece of advice?
I would say be prepared to work really, really hard. And if you are prepared to work really, really hard, then you have a great chance. But don't be worried about failure, because it doesn't really necessarily stop you.
Awesome. Thank you. Chris?
For me, it would be ready to sacrifice a couple of things, you know, if not most things, to help you get to your goal. And be selfish. It's probably very important when you're trying to go for your goal and you're giving up everything. Things might come your way and you might have to push some things aside. Things might not align with your vision. You have to kind of be selfish.
I think that's really interesting, because a lot of people are scared of doing that, you know, choosing what's best for them, because they have other factors they're worrying about in their life. But if your goal is to really live the best life you can, live a life you're in love with, live a life that isn't the easiest route, then you really got to get down to what you need most right now, and trying not to, you know, worry about obviously, like people with families, they have to concern themselves with other things, but really kind of choosing wisely where you put your time, where you put your energy, because we have only so much, that you need to make sure that everything you're kind of doing is in alignment with what you're trying to create.
Agreed.
Yeah.
Awesome. All right. My last question is, in 3 words, how would you describe the experience you're having on this earth? Or a phrase.
I'll say pretty fucking great.
Awesome.
So far.
And Chris?
Learning every day.
I like that one.
Wow. I love both those. Okay, now for my two questions. All right, I'm gonna hit my fast forward us into the future here. And you guys are now 85 years old. And my question to you is, what does the 85-year-old Ryan Giles look like? What does the 85-year-old Chris Cortinas look like? What is the life you are living now? And what is the legacy that you've left behind from your 85 years?
Whew, that's a lot. Hopefully I'm retired at 85, and I will be looking back at a life of a body of work that I've put out that has helped make the world a better place, hopefully. And hopefully I'll be looking down at my kids and my grandkids and have my tribe all healthy and happy around me. And if I've done that, then I'm pretty successful.
Beautiful. Chris?
For me, it would probably be making sure I left a mark on this earth, with my music, with the content. I don't have a family yet, but we will have a family, and kind of like what Ryan said, making sure they're all healthy and not really, I don't need to be like a successful, wealthy, rich person. I just want to be healthy and be able to I definitely want to be retired. That's a given. But yeah, I mean, I definitely want people around me as happy as they can be. And that my music, kind of does what it needs to do. Lifetime from now, So yeah.
Beautiful. And since we're getting all funky here and playing around with the Derek Pang time machine, we're going to take these 85-year-old Chris Cortinas and Ryan Giles, and I'm going to allow you to send a message back to the current versions of yourself. So what would the 85-year-old Ryan Giles, what message would he send back to you, Ryan, right now?
Hurry up and get to work.
Mine's going to have to be, stop worrying about things that haven't even happened.
Yeah, it's crazy how much we operate from fear of things that will probably never happen. So just gaining the awareness that we do that is the first step, right? That's what I've been working on for a long time, is just recognizing, taking this back seat, observing what's happening in my head and being like, is that really me? Is that really true? I don't know. I don't think so. So that's beautiful.
So I'm just so stoked to have you guys on. I was telling Tyha, like, these two, Ryan and Chris, they fly under the radar, but like they should be right at the top of the hill, shining their light, because that's what they do every time I see them, and that's who they are. So where can they find you guys, Chris, Ryan? If people are interested to connect with you, where can they connect with you?
I'm hard to connect with, actually. I don't have any social media, so I don't know. If you want to email me, you can just email theryangiles@gmail.com, I guess, if you have any questions.
You can find me at Chris Cortinas, ChrisCortinas on Instagram. I believe it's the same on Facebook. That's pretty much it. My I produce under Off the Clock with the AOFFDA clock. You can find my music on TrackSource, Spotify, iTunes, wherever. And yeah.
Off the clock. I like it.
That's the mission right there, man. I want to be off the clock.
Love that. Well, I've really, really appreciated this conversation, meeting you guys, and I'm just super excited to continue to follow what you guys create and see what we all can continue doing in this world when we're just following our passion. So
yeah,
really
thank you guys
appreciate it,
for having us on, and you guys are doing a great job.
Thank you.
And congratulations on the podcast.
Yeah, thank you guys. So let's raise our fists in the air in love, in solidarity, and in truth. Let's bring it into the winner's circle.
Boom.
Oh,
Booyah. All right, thank you guys.
Thank you guys so much.
That is a wrap.
Have
Beautiful.
a great rest of your day.
Awesome. Thank you guys.
Bye.
Have a good